Good afternoon. We'll now call to order the Village Council regular meeting of September 24th, 2024, here at Assembly Hall. As is our tradition, we will begin with an invocation followed by a Pledge of Allegiance. I'm going to ask Reverend Katie Horster to come forward and lead us, please, in an invocation, and she'll be followed by Landon Smith from the Calvary Christian School, who's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please, Katie.
Let us pray. Lord, we come to you today asking for wisdom and guidance as we begin this meeting. May everything we do begin with your inspiration and continue with your help. May we speak out when it is time to speak out and listen when it is time to listen. May we always be guided by your Holy Spirit of community, justice, and love. Amen.
Thank you. Landon, please. Everybody rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Okay. Now go forward with reports, as we traditionally do, and we'll ask the village manager to begin.
Thanks, Mayor. So this Saturday we have the Futterfly Festival, and that is starts at 11 a.m. at the Village Arboretum. So this is organized by the Village Heritage Foundation with support from the Village of Pinehurst. Also, we have received enough of our resident surveys that we can move forward on that process, but we do still have our business survey open. So anyone that operates a local business here in the community, please fill that out. You can get it on our website if you're interested in doing that. And we have some committee and board openings that we are looking to fill that will be becoming vacant in the next few months. So anyone interested in serving the committee and spending more time with us is welcome to submit their application, and we'll review those and get back to you. So yeah, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Along those lines, I do want to emphasize what the village manager just mentioned. We do have, I believe it's now 6 neighborhood advisory committee representative positions that are vacant. And so those of you, you can look it right up on the website. As a matter of fact, it's on the front page of the website. And if you happen to live in one of those vacant neighborhoods, please consider applying for the spot as the representative. We meet once a month, about 10 months out of the year, 9 months or 10, and it's a good way to have input into your community because most of the council will join in a meeting and want to hear your thoughts on issues as well as sharing some of the council's activities. So I encourage that. And we also have several openings that are approaching regarding our advisory committees. Again, if you feel you can do something for your village, to paraphrase what was President Kennedy's remarks, ask not what your village can do for you, ask what you can do for your village. And if you feel so capable of coming forward, there's advisory boards on planning and zoning and historic preservation, the bicycle and pedestrian pathway, but we need volunteer activity for our community, so please. 2 other things to mention, 3 actually. One, this last week, the 9th annual awards reception for the Village Heritage Foundation took place at the Fair Barn, and there were 4 more historical cottages in our village that received a historic plaque presentation. And so I want to congratulate the folks that put it on, as well as the award winners. We all know how special Pinehurst is, the long history it has, and this is a way to recognize the homes that people have upkept and taken care of over the years. And so congratulations to the Village Heritage Foundation. Coming actually next week, the 27th and 28th, I was asked to mention the Sand Hills Quilters Guild is having Quilting in the Pines. So those of you who are quilters out there, I am not, but those of you who are, feel free to look it up at sandhillsquilters.org, and there's going to be raffle baskets, a silent auction, and it's going to, again, be held at the Fair Barn, right there by the harness track. Last item I wanted to mention is, as I've done on occasion, is in reading the daily Pinehurst Police Department reports, every now and then I pull one out, and just to share with you what the Pinehurst Police Department is doing on a daily basis. And this is a report from last Tuesday, 9/17, and they had a total of 77 calls for service. But what I found interesting is they had 27 traffic stops in that one day. 15 of them, there was a citation issued, so they wrote a ticket. 8 of them, they gave a verbal warning to the driver, and 4 was a written warning. So the police department is on the ball and protecting us by making sure that traffic doesn't run amok, shall we say. And so we thank them for their work and their service. And with that, I'll turn to John Taylor, see if he has any reports.
No report, Pat.
Okay. Dr. Morgan.
A couple items here. Want to extend congratulations to the Carolina Philharmonic. They had their annual gala for their to attract funding. It was on Friday the 13th at the Fair Barn. They highlighted a lot of our youth in the area and their music. And I was fortunate enough to be able to go to that. And let me tell you, it was outstanding. The youth we have around here and what they're being able to do now and learning the music and stuff is pretty phenomenal. So congratulations to them. Also, I want to extend a shout out to the Walk to End Alzheimer's event that occurred on the 14th of Saturday. And it was at the Sandhills Community College. I got to attend the tail end of that. But again, another worthwhile event that we had in our area, and I appreciate all that was done for that. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Ficklin.
Yes, thank you. Just a couple of things. I also attended the Alzheimer's walk at Sandhills. There were a total of 1,084 participants, and that's just humans. I can promise you that about half of the humans had 4-legged dogs with them. So it was quite the walk and quite the turnout. Their goal for this walk was to raise $130,000, and they actually raised $167,213, and so it was a very successful event. Fortunately, a beautiful day and lots of fun. The second thing I wanted to mention is that I attended the Pinehurst Business Partners meeting yesterday evening. That was held at the our community center. They highlighted the upcoming events, primarily focusing on the Holly Arts Festival, which is coming up on Saturday, October 19th. So mark your calendars for that event. They also mentioned that in November they will be working with the Chamber of Commerce over a networking event. On December 6th, they will be involved in our Christmas tree lighting ceremony. We were well represented, by the way, at our community center. Ashley Thompson, who handles the Welcome Center, and the volunteers associated with that was there, along with Dave White, our Cannon Park Recreation Superintendent, and a new person, our new Special Events Coordinator, Chris Smengler. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb. Councilman Farrell.
Nothing new to report, but I will second the request for volunteers, not only on the boards and commissions and the Neighborhood Advisory Board, but also don't forget the Welcome Center, which is run by volunteers also. And that's certainly a very interesting project. Stationed at the Welcome Center, you get to meet a lot of people getting into the town. You learn a lot about the village also. It's a worthwhile activity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to item 4 on the agenda, motion to approve the consent agenda. All items listed on the agenda are considered routine or have been discussed at length in previous meetings and will be enacted by one motion. No separate discussion will be held unless requested by a member of the village council. These involve 3 approval of council meeting minutes. One from September 10th, regular meeting minutes. The second one from September 10th, work session minutes. And the third from September 10th, closed session minutes. So I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve all the items listed and considered routine on the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have an approval and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion adopted. That's the end of the consent agenda. Now we're going to go on to our public comments period. And I know I've heard, and some of our fellow council members have heard from residents who want to make a statement or presentation dealing with the traffic circle, because in our work session, the council was going to have a discussion on many of the various items that were submitted and so forth regarding the traffic circle. And obviously, we're looking for alternative ideas now that the shifted pillow and the CFI are now being reviewed in light of the public's outspoken opposition to seeking something more practical for our historic traffic circle. So, having said that, let me ask 3 people to come up. I'm going to ask Sarah Copeland to come up. I think she indicated that she has something she wants to read. I thought I saw her. Oh, yes, here she is. Come forward, Sarah.
I'm actually speaking on behalf of my neighbor, Vicki Bowles, who is unable to be here, and she just wanted to share her thoughts on the circle and what would be going on in response to that. In response to requests for suggestions about different thoughts and ideas for changes to the current plan for the traffic circle, I would like to present some guiding principles as opposed to specific design ideas. Do not destroy the Midland Road entrance to the village. It is iconic, historic, and often referred to as the Fifth Avenue of Golf. Do not use eminent domain to take people's homes. Do not destroy anyone's home. Minimize the destruction of trees. The residents of the village and Moore County as a whole appreciate the opportunity for input into this process. Thank you for your consideration and taking the time to listen to alternative solutions. Respectively submitted, Vicki Pennington Bowles. But I would also say that I second that motion.
Okay, thank you, Sarah, and thank Vicki. Let me ask Joe Jeffries. I thought I saw him. Ah, yes. Please come forward, Joe. Let us know your address, and I know you went to the effort to do a quick slideshow, so just speak into the microphone and we'll be fine.
My name's Joe Jeffress. I live at 280 Inverary Road in number 7 across the street. Moved here permanently about 4 years ago. First house we bought over 20 years ago. Been coming ever since. To us, this is a slice of heaven. We plan this is our final home we're planning on here too. So a little bit of my background, I was from Oklahoma originally, went in the military, did that for 34 years, then a second tour, mostly of it in the financial business. And so that's where we are now. I'm not getting paid for this. I wanted to make sure that this is me and a bunch of other folks that are chipping together to do what we can to save the circle. Not the least of which is we have a little artificial intelligence breakfast group that gets together at Pinecrest about once a month. And we started exploring artificial intelligence, and something clicked in my brain, maybe I should ask ChatGPT if there was some way it could help us with the traffic circle. ChatGPT, who I have nicknamed Charlotte, is my assistant, and she is wonderful. She can do just about anything faster and quicker than anybody else can and go through a lot more information than I can. So that's kind of where we're starting. But we've been talking about this. Next slide. Next slide, I'm calling the current situation, and this is well known to y'all. 5 spokes, which makes it kind of unique. 5+ I call it, because of Airport Road is a little bit of a tweak in there. You can see the colors of the traffic on the slide. Backups, congestion are growing. People are getting upset. We need something, another solution. And if you go to the next slide, we all know about the evil pillow. Here's the pillow, or the CFI. Long construction time, they don't expect it to be 2033, and all of us who have been involved in construction know that's probably optimistic. Expensive, same thing. Disruptive. The field of Pinehurst is going to be destroyed. Midland Road, the so-called Fifth Avenue of Goff, will become a back alley. Numerous trees are going to be gone. Eminent domain, you just hate to even think about that. And for us in number 7, you can look what happens to us. Our entrance is going to turn in to go somewhere else, and Midland Road, turn left to go to the village is going to be a sad sight. Right now, that's the way that we get lined up with flags on every holiday. Beautiful, patriotic. I love that part of it. There's got to be a way we can save that. Next slide. This is kind of the guts of my artificial intelligence enhanced traffic management system. It's a lot of sensors and information. So we have variable speed limit signs. Those are the kind of little yellow spots you see out there. And they'll be back on each road, and there'll be videos that'll come off and on telling people what to expect, so that we got people that have never been in traffic circles before when they get here. What to expect, which lane is right, which lane do you get into. Sensors and cameras, those are the things that look like the white squares with little squibbles. Those are a bunch of cameras. And they can be cameras, they can be radar, et cetera, that are going to go down each one of the spokes and then in the traffic circle itself. And those sensors will be able to pick up individual cars. As soon as they come into sight, they give them a tag, and that tag will stay with them as they transit the traffic circle. So we'll be able to figure out if somebody's coming from 211, which spoke they get in on, which spoke they get off on. And the system would also store that data. And as we'll talk a little bit later, we'll use that data to feed back into the system so it can learn how the patterns are and where folks are coming and going from. The traffic lights are to let you in. You see they're just red, green. And some of us who were up in the Virginia, D.C. area, they had these to where if you were going to get an HOV lane and it was kind of backed up, you pulled up and let you go back and forth. So these would do the same thing. Somebody's coming on 15501 and they have to wait for somebody to go past. The system will know where the other cars are and allows them to go in. If 15501 is backed up, what they can do is allow 2 or 3 or 4 cars in, and that when Midland Road doesn't have as many cars, they can wait for a few more seconds. But the system can recognize all of this, has algorithms to be able to capture that data, synchronize it so that all of the spokes feeding in there are synchronized in somewhat of a ballet as they're coming in and exiting that. It knows the time of day, it knows what the traffic is at certain times of day, on the day it's there, et cetera. So this, I think, is the way of the future. Construction, nothing has to be done to the roads. We don't even have to put those loops that are in the street that although you put the loops in, they break the top of the pavement, and that leads to destruction. These can all be planted in poles that can be along the way, hopefully the right color and the right texture, right feel to match up with the village of Pinehurst. we're hoping that all that stuff leads us in so that you get the information you need to be able to do that, and then the centralized system synchronizes it. And I was asked where the centralized system is located. I don't have an answer for that. It doesn't have to be far away, but with our communication system now, it can be just about anywhere. One of the things that can be done is put it with where we put a lot of stuff. We put it over with the fire station or the police station. Those people are always there. This data will feed in there. It can detect a stoppage on the system and let the police know immediately that there's something wrong. It can detect a fire because of the pictures they're getting and let the fire department know there's something wrong. So we think this can really tie in. From an area point of view, besides just Pinehurst, this is kind of one intersection we're talking. But if you start looking at the whole area, if you look at the Highway 1, 15501 intersection, that one can be a mess at times. And it could actually synchronize all the lights from Harris Teeter up on Ivy Lane all the way down past Aberdeen if somebody was so much wanted to do that to make sure that we have a smooth stream all the way through on all our highways. Continuous learning, as I said, they take data. Every time it goes through, you can take the data from a few days, dump it back into the system. It picks out new patterns, and then it adjusts the system to do that. So one of the things that has to happen is we know that people now pull up to the traffic circle and they'll stop before they go. If the light's green, they need to go. Somehow they're going to have to get the confidence to do that. So the system will probably adjust to that as it goes along so that when people pull up, they see a green, they pull out knowing they're not going to hit somebody and they're not going to get hit by somebody. So, next slide, please. Our new traffic circle looks just like it does today. That's the idea. Preserves our historic values. The traffic circle is iconic, and Midland Road is iconic. Saves times. The estimate on here, I've got some more data if you want to look at it, but the estimate on the time is 18 months to 3 years to put this in at a cost of about from $7 to $13 million, whereas the CFI 9 years before they think it's going to be finished at the cost of $54 million. Saves trees, homes. It also reduces emissions because every time a car's sitting still, I think the number's like 24 times the amount of pollutants it's putting out as compared to when it's moving. So that I think is really important. Eminent domain, we just don't want that to happen at all. And I think one of the things that it would do for us, they're using artificial intelligence all over the world. I've looked at different things in Darmstadt, Germany, and Singapore, Los Angeles, but they're looking at an entire, 30,000 square miles. Even Charlotte, 3 million people and 3,000 square miles. We're talking about something very small that somebody could probably pull off as a proof of principle for almost free to be able to prove they can do this somewhere else. There are several companies that are working on those. I didn't bring them in to talk about because I don't want to name anybody, but there are a lot of companies out there are doing artificial intelligence traffic management. So I'd be kind of proud to be, besides golf, we could also be proud of something like this that's real innovative. So, that it. Next slide. I got one more slide here. This is kind of the call to action. I think this makes a smart, adaptable, cost-effective solution. I think we can do it. Not a lot of money, and while they're waiting to spend the $54 million, we can, this is, in Washington we call it budget dust. It's kind of underneath the rug, it falls off as you're moving money around. $7 million, I realize that's not, it is a lot amount of money, but in there. So I think we ought to invest in this as we can, let people know we support this, and I think this will be the outcome that we'd like, where we save the traffic circle and help move traffic through that unique intersection. Questions? No.
Thank you very much. One, for coming here and telling us about this, and two, you put some real effort into this, and we appreciate that.
Yes, sir, thank you.
We get one clarification. The number you cited as far as expense, where did that come from? Can you give a source?
My assistant, I blame her for everything.
Oh, of course.
My assistant went through and she priced out the traffic signs,
Okay.
traffic signals, the prices of those, and said how many we thought they would be.
Okay.
That may be underestimated because I think it needs to be expanded a little bit more.
So the
back down the road.
cumulative sum of all those factors.
Right, yeah.
Okay, anything else? No. Thank you again, Joe. Okay, next person. The next person who wanted to address us tonight in the public comments period is Peter Mazuzek. Peter, if I botched your last name, please clarify it. But I thought I had it.
The way my wife pronounces it, it's Mama has an itch, Mama's itch.
Mama's itch.
It comes
Okay.
out right. My name is Peter Mamuzich, and I'm very interested in the circle. I drew a plan that anybody's welcome to look at. But just as a little bit of history, our historic Pinehurst traffic circle was built 68 years ago and is the largest traffic circle in the United States. There's some larger ones elsewhere, but this one is the largest here. It has stood the test of time and worked for 68 years. Recently, NCDOT did a study several years ago. I have reviewed that 430-page study and had many questions that they had assumptions in it. They are still reviewing my comments and have not gotten back to me yet. This was back in June. My belief is that the existing Pinehurst traffic circle can be improved with a few design changes that will make it function even better in the future. However, it functions great now. I came here at 4:10. It took me 30 seconds to get through the circle coming from Midland Road, and that was after the high school was out. So it's working. I didn't come out 15501 because that's where the backup occurs. The NCDOT proposal is a continuous flow intersection. There is nothing continuous flow about the continuous flow intersection. That's why they changed the name. Its inherent design means a stop-and-go traffic. There are over 35 traffic lights and 36 lanes converging into that intersection. It's going to be a nightmare, and I don't think we'll enjoy it. But rather than destroying the circle, we should improve it. However, it is insanity to believe that feeding one-lane circle with 6 lanes of traffic coming in at 45 miles an hour, really going 55, 60 miles an hour, and 3 other lanes coming in at 35 miles an hour or higher, will result in anything but backups during heavy periods. And Mayor, you spoke with the police department. This is where our police department should come in. 15501 should not be driving at 55, 60 miles an hour, which they do. If I'm going 45, I'm getting past like I'm standing still. That really needs to be patrolled more. To improve the circle, I propose a 4-phase plan. We can implement the first phase right now, and that is to lower the speed limit on all incoming roads to 35 miles an hour. I'm not sure how much control we have of that because they are NCDOT roads. But I think it's ridiculous to have 15501 coming in at 55 miles an hour and then stopping down to nothing. I would lower that to 35 miles an hour past the Hickory Tavern. Same with 211 coming in. Now it's 55 to Gun Club and then 45 in. It should go down to 35. We need to post the speed limit signs in the circle. Right now, there are no speed limit signs in the circle. There is a suggested speed of 30 outside the circle, but it's a diamond sign, which is just a suggestion. Let's put some speed limits in and then enforce those speed limits. I think it would behoove us to have a policeman stationed there, just like we did during the U.S. Open, and everything worked very well. Phase 2, in the next year, we need to change the geometry of the entrance into the circle. The circle was designed 68 years ago, and it has a 30-degree angle merge, which is very difficult if you have stop-and-go traffic. If you're going, great, but if you stop, you have to bend your body all the way over, and it's really hard for some of us to do that. I see people pulling up to the circle and then canting their car to the left so they can see the oncoming traffic. We need to separate all left and right exit lanes with physical barriers, as we have done on some of the current spokes. Also, we need to plant lower decorative plants so that we can see, have a longer line of sight. I think the change in geometry and being able to see will vastly improve the accident prevention in the circle. Right now, 88% of the accidents are due to rear-end bumps where somebody starts going, decides traffic is coming too fast, stops, and the guy behind him, because they're looking way left, hits him. Now, they're small accidents, and they'll go away because of the new technology. National Highway Transportation Safety Board has just passed the law in April that all cars sold in 2029 will have automatic braking. So basically, rear-end collisions go away. Phase 3, 2029 and beyond. We need to construct a turbo lane inside the circle per this attached print. It's being used today in California. It's being used in Europe in many places. Some people say we can't handle 2 lanes. We can't even handle 1. The way it's designed, it's much better to merge at speed than to merge when you're standing still and coming in. This thing works well. England has over 40,000 circles, much smaller country than we are, and it works wonderfully there. Continuing with phase 3, flare the 3 incoming lanes with physical dividers preventing crossover, and install lights and meter merging lanes during peak hours, sort of like what the AI comments were. We'll have some lights. The heavy traffic on 15501 will be preferentially let go, and maybe Midland will be held back with those lights. Phase 4, if we need it. I don't know if we will need it or if the improvements so far will make it okay. But we build an underpass or overpass for either 15501 north to south or 211. I'm not sure which, because this is, 2029, 2030, who knows what the growth will be. I think the NCDOT study is saying, 50% of growth on Midland Road going eastbound. I don't see that. There just aren't enough home sites for that to grow that much. So I would defer phase 4 till we get closer to that point in time. NCDOT is tasked with keeping the traffic moving, and that's why they gave this proposal. But the Pinehurst CFI with Midland Reroute will have more individual traffic lights than what Charlotte has. More traffic lanes, it'll cost $54 million. We'll need bigger footprint, requiring cutting 6 acres of trees and spending $24 million on acquiring many personal homes and properties throughout eminent domain proceedings. CFI, if it works, may save a few minutes, but is it really worth saving a few minutes and destroying people's homes and really destroying our circle? So I know that NCDOT owns the road, but you are influencers. I think all of us are influencers. Reach out to NCDOT, tell them what you think. I think we can improve the circle, save NCDOT some money, and be much happier for it. That's all I have. If anybody wants to review this, I will leave it on the desk.
Thank you. Again, thank you for coming here tonight and for your extra effort in both your thoughts and your diagrams. And yes, please leave a copy of them. Okay. Anybody have something to say or?
We received a lot of emails and correspondence relative to the circle. Some of them expressed opposition. Others had suggestions with them. And this particular gentleman accompanied it with a 16-page report with detailed analysis and references and so forth. So there's been a lot of thought put into some of the thoughts that are coming forward, and we certainly appreciate it.
Let me ask if anybody who has not signed up who would like to come forward and make a comment or a suggestion, please indicate and come on up. Right there, lady with the hat.
Colette Klinsky, 25 Queens Court. You've heard my other two speeches at the last two council meetings. I'd just like to mention one thing that nobody's brought up, and that is they keep talking about the population that's expected. And they don't make any distinction between, is that going to be a young person's population that uses the schools and the lanes early in the morning and in the afternoon, or is that going to be a senior, more elderly population, as we have had for 100 years, that basically doesn't use the lanes that much in the morning? They usually are pretty much home or sedentary or use different times. I'd just like to say that nobody's mentioned that there is a difference between populations and the type you get. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Yes, come forward. By the way, I was going through some data yesterday, and the most recent data we have about our population regarding the age of our residents is that in 83% of the homes in Pinehurst, there is no one in those homes under the age of 18. So there is an imbalance along those lines. Go ahead.
Okay. Lynn Goldhammer, 11 Salem Lane. We had some traffic circles back in New Jersey, and one of the things they noticed is they worked well until there were 2 lanes coming in from each direction. And I see one of the challenges we have here is we've got 10 lanes entering the circle. But meanwhile, there's some room around there. And I think that if we just sort of redesigned the right turn area where you don't come into the circle and out of it, but rather over, be further over and just kind of get out of it, I think that for one thing would help, I think. I know we've started putting out some little blockades on the road, and maybe that's helping. I don't know. That makes me wonder, has there been a decrease at all in traffic accidents since that happened? And I don't know, but I just keep thinking that if we had 5 lanes going into the circle instead of 10, that might be a little relief. The other thing I want to say is if we do more traffic lights, they have ways of controlling some of these lights that they don't have to be active when there's not enough traffic to warrant it. I lived in a beach town in New Jersey, and in the off-season, on some of the roads where there were traffic lights, they just kept the main road flashing yellow, that you have the right-of-way, the crossroads red. And I'd say usually by 7 o'clock at night, there's not much traffic. People are home already. The shoppers are home, the commuters are home, but definitely by 9 o'clock at night, there's no reason to sit still at the Pinecrest High School traffic light. And I think that's so in most of these. I mean, there might be some major ones that you need, but all the smaller ones, I think they could go on a flashing system that automatically happens at a certain time of the evening and stays on till a certain time in the morning when the traffic rises up. But and I think that any further development in the future should be done in such a way that no further traffic lights are required. One thing I noticed is once you get north of Morganton Road on 15501 or Route 1, with the exception of a hiccup at the light, at this traffic circle and maybe a couple other lights, it's pretty much smooth sailing until you get to Sanford, and they put all these traffic lights on the high-speed highway. they should not be on high-speed highways. That's for people to make, to get going and stay going and not sit there twiddling their thumbs. So I just think just a couple of those little things could make some of this work a little better without a major financial investment. And then see if it works, and if not, second option is go up to here. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else who'd like to come forward? I see some hands up there. Come on up, Mr. Ford. Let me state your name and address.
Ray Ford, 20 Dalrymple, Pinehurst. I just first want to say I want to thank the mayor and this council for the resolution that was passed, and all the neighbors and support of us that were really going to be influenced very much by the CFI. Dalrymple, we're going to lose probably 3 homes, maybe 4, and many of our backyards. So I think the help that we've gotten from the community, I really want to show my appreciation here tonight for all my neighbors, and thank you for supporting us. Peter and I have talked a couple of times, and he's right. There's many things we can do right now with that traffic circle to mitigate the problems that are going on without completely destroying the looks of the area. And I think there is a great idea in the A1. I don't know that much about it, but it certainly sounds like it should be looked at by the DOT. But there is a lot of two good presentations today that I think deserve a lot of attention, and especially what we can do now with very little cost. But that's all I have to say. But thank you very much, and I want to thank Peter for his comments, because we've talked, and he's in number 9, and even though I don't know if he's Southern Pines or Pinehurst sometimes, but he has been a very good support of all of us. Yes. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. Well, number 9 has some particular impact on their entranceway and the cutoff to Beaver Lane. So I've heard from some individuals who live there. I thought I saw another hand up there. Yes, sir. Right.
My name is Jim Artman. I'm 220 Inverary Road, right down there, my neighbor. I just want to say everything that's been presented today, I think are just great ideas. I think they're going to work. I did turn into some suggestions. There's one thing that wasn't mentioned. I agree fully that I think the speed limit should be reduced approaching the traffic circle, but also around the traffic circle. So I've noticed many times just trying to get in, having my doors blown off because people are really hauling around it. But the thought of, and I don't know if it can be done, but installing cameras that with signage that says we're watching your speed limit and tickets will be issued. I think that would have a very good psychological effect on having people to reduce their speed. And then the last thing I just wanted to say is I've experienced a lot of the lights that you mentioned about the red and green. Many places getting on expressways, tollways. Experienced them many times. They work. I think that's a fantastic idea. That was it. Thank you.
Yes.
Bob Hammond, 275 Dundee Road here in the village. I've sent things to all the council members, and they all responded back to me, which I appreciated a lot. A couple of things. I think reducing speed limit within the circles is important. I think encouraging people to use their turn signals when they exit the circle is very important. If you use your turn signal, sometimes 2 cars can get out instead of just 1. I also think we need to try and make the circle a town sort of a circle and get all the through traffic outside of town through some sort of a connector, a western connector. We got 4 lanes coming into 11 from the west, and we got 4 lanes coming from Fayetteville. So those are going to connect somewhere. Right now they're coming into the 15501 US 1 corridor, and that all comes up to the circle. So getting traffic outside our city would be very important.
Thank you, Bob. Yes, I see a hand back there. Come forward, please.
Hi, Deborah Myatt, 2 Victoria Way. A couple of things I agree now and more so in the future, we need some sort of bypass to move so many of these trucks, commercial vehicles that really don't want to be held up at the circle, get them where they need to go, which is many different directions. I was born and raised in Massachusetts, where we had a tunnel that was built in 1934 without the benefit of the technology we currently have today. That was 1.1 miles underneath Boston Harbor, talking about a lot of weight. That is still functional today, with a speed limit of approximately 40 miles an hour going in it, going through it, and exiting. If I've mentioned a circle or a tunnel before at all three of the DOT meetings. I was repeatedly told by approximately 10 people it would be expensive. No one was able to define what expensive is. I really believe if we had a tunnel going underneath the circle, you'd be in and out in no time if you were going, let's say, even 35 miles an hour. Whether it was going north and south on 15501 or east and west on 211, it would eliminate a lot of the traffic that just wanted to go through, not get off on Pinehurst or go to Southern Pines. I think that's something that could be looked into. I think the excuse it would be expensive isn't a good one until you hear the number. But if you were to do something like that, you'd be eliminating, what, 24 million in eminent domain and leaving the surface with a lot less traffic and leaving the circle that really is sort of an identifier for repeat visitors coming to town. I hate to see it destroyed. I understand progress. I don't understand undoing history and what puts you on the map to begin with. If we don't remain special, we're any town USA. And Pinehurst, its residents, its visitors, both past, present, and future, deserve better. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Any other comments? No. Questions? Any questions? No. Let me just, one, thank you all for your comments, your efforts. Many of these ideas, many of us have heard before, and they're things that we've discussed. Some of them become more robust. Those you've continuing doing more work as to what might work as a solution, as opposed to the NCDOT proposal of the CFI. It was January of 2023 when the council met to discuss the original CFI before it became the shifted pillow. And at that time, we sent about, I guess, 9 recommendations to the NCDOT, as we told them that we didn't think their proposal was good for Pinehurst. And we're very glad to see about a year later they took us up on 2 of them. They put some clearer signage as you approach the circle. You've seen those signs that now say only for certain lanes. And those lane dividers that were put in the circle, that idea originated right in this room amongst the council members. Dr. Morgan and I were on the council at that time. Of course, I guess it was last month, we unanimously adopted a resolution so that NCDOT clearly understood how the council felt, because we were, I think, reflecting very much the residents of the village of Pinehurst and their thoughts. So we put this on the agenda to hear further input from the residents. We have, when we start discussing this later in the work session, we'll be brainstorming a little bit. We may end up sending another letter to NCDOT with some more suggestions, some of them which are reflected here. And they're always suggestions because that's what we can do. We can make suggestions. And sometimes we break through with an idea and it can get implemented. I do think it's been pointed out tonight, the long fuse on when this construction would start under their proposal, which is 2030, I think, is when it's going to start. So it wouldn't end to 2032 or something. And who knows where we'll all be then. We may all be flying around like George Jetson with a jetpack on us, and this will all be moot. But nevertheless, again, I very much want to thank you all for keeping this issue and your thoughts in the forefront. And just to remind you, you are all not alone. You are representing the overwhelming majority of the opinions about the proposal from NCDOT from the Village of Pinehurst residents. And hopefully we'll be able to make some progress when we get back together with NCDOT, hopefully in the coming month or so. So again, thank you. And unless there is anybody who wants to comment on anything else in this public comment section, I see a hand. Go ahead. I don't know about all the things, but we'll pass on what we think are probably the best of the best recommendations. And that's the beginning of a discussion. I mean, that's just how it works. It's not we're not in total control of the situation. It's not our circle. Those aren't our roads. But it is our village. And I think we have both a responsibility and we have a practical necessity to speak up when someone wants to do something to that circle or anything else in our historic landmark district. So, thank you. We will, in our work session, we will go into detail amongst ourselves a little bit. You're welcome, of course, to stay or watch it on video or go home and watch it comfortably in your lazy boy chair or whatever you sit in. And otherwise, we will move on to item 6. Okay. Thank you. Item 6 this is an ordinance issue. The ordinance is 24-12, amending Chapter 110 of the Village of Pinehurst Municipal Code regarding peddling and soliciting on private property within the Village of Pinehurst. Is there a staff presentation on this at all?
Yeah, Shannon's actually going to handle it.
Okay.
Just as is noted in the agenda memo for the amendment, is coming before council to help remedy an inconsistency between our Pinehurst Municipal Code and the Constitution of both the state of North Carolina and the United States Constitution, the federal Constitution, specifically regarding First Amendment rights. So as the ordinance is currently written, we're not granting any rights to commercial speech, and we're also imposing regulations on non-commercial speech. Both of those violate First Amendment. So we've changed the ordinance to take that into consideration. Non-commercial speech is not regulated anymore. And then commercial speech we are regulating in the ways that we're permitted to, which is time, place, and manner. So that's the amendment in a nutshell. If you have any questions, I can answer those for you. We also included a little fact presentation that Kristen put together for us after the last NAC meeting, where we kind of reviewed the amendments that we were going to be doing to the ordinance.
Yes. I'll ask my colleagues if they have any comments. This is timely because we're entering a political season, so those are protected rights for people who go door to door and all. And this is sort of the beginning, I guess, of formally cleaning up our ordinances and PDO and so forth. So I'll ask my colleagues if they have any particular comments on this proposed ordinance.
Just reviewed all the different items on there, and I think it's the right way to go. So I support it.
report. Jack, you have any
Shannon,
comments?
just to be clear, if I'm not selling something or representing a business, how narrow is the definition of commercial? I guess that's my question.
Okay, so the definition of commercial is that you're lawfully and truthfully offering a good or service for sale. So that would be anyone door-to-door soliciting for internet service, roofing, any type of good that you would be purchasing or entering into a contract with that person. Non-commercial speech is anything from political to religious, charitable. They're basically going around door to door to offer information, share beliefs and ideas with people. They are not soliciting money in any way. So even commercial solicitation or speech would cover charities that are going around asking for donations. They would need to register with us because that's a transaction in a way.
If I'm selling something, the proceeds of which go to a charity, that would be considered charitable or commercial?
So charitable, as long as you're not asking for donations from someone. So if you're wanting exchange of money to occur, we would want you to register. So it's kind of straddling both. It's not necessarily commercial. It's a charity, but because you're going to be exchanging money and asking for information from people, we'd want you to register for it.
Okay, thank you.
John, was there anything on the resolution that concerned you and how it was written for that?
No, I just wanted to be clear in my own mind how it would be applied.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Anyone else? Jack? Barbara? No? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve ordinance 2412, amending chapter 110 of the Village of Pinehurst Municipal Code regarding peddling and soliciting on private property within the Village of Pinehurst.
A motion?
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion adopted. Do we have a motion to adjourn the regular meeting? And then I would suggest we take a 5-minute break.
I move to adjourn the regular meeting.
Second.
Okay, a motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let's take 5 minutes. Thank you. Village Council work session for the meeting of September 24th, 2024. And we have 4 items listed under general business, and then we'll take up other business. Item A is a discussion on potential changes to the village nuisance noise ordinance. Discussion B will be on potential changes to the village nuisance lighting ordinance. Discussion C will be on the resident submitted traffic circle alternative ideas. And item D will be discussion on the village council strategic planning process. So I see Chief Webb joining us and Alex Cameron, planning, Czar, and go ahead. I'll turn it over to whoever wants to assume.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I have a few slides that I'll go over and kind of give us a little bit of background on this issue and also a little bit of background on just how noise works in general. So the existing ordinance, one, it's a little confusing and maybe a little redundant. It's not bad, it has worked, but we decided to look at it, and one of the reasons that we were specifically asked to look at it is this ambient noise level issue and how, sometimes you may need to go out there a second time to measure the ambient noise versus the regular noise that's coming from a violation. And so we want to deal with that issue. You can see on the screen that what we want to do is make it cleaner so nobody that's enforcing this has to go out twice. One thing we wanted to discuss is how sound works. As you know, sound is made by vibrations that are picked up in the air, but decibels are how we measure sound, and they're on a logarithmic unit. They are not linear. So one of the issues with our current ordinance is that it talks about ambient noise and then adding on top of it what noise might be coming from a neighboring property. So you can't add those linearly. You have to add them logarithmically, and so that causes some issues. And so, yeah, as you know, ambient noise is just the background noise, and if you add the decimals, you can't do it linearly. You have to add it. So if you had ambient noise of like 45 decibels, which is when I went outside at 10 o'clock last night in front of my house, it was about 45, and it was crickets chirping in the background. But if you add music playing at 75 decibels, the total noise would be still 75 decibels because it basically drowns out the quieter, softer noise of the crickets chirping. And another example, if you have 3 people in a room and you're all talking at 60 decibels, the total combined decibel level of all 3 people talking at once is only about 65 decibels, so it doesn't change it a whole lot. So when we're looking at our ordinance, it may make sense to get rid of that ambient measurement level and just measure the overall level of noise that's coming from a certain situation. This is the math on how you come up with that. So we may use ChatGPT to come up with traffic circle solutions. We also use ChatGPT to come up with how much sound would come from 3 people talking in a room. So that's the math on it. Just so everyone kind of has an idea of what decibel levels are what, here's kind of a chart for it. We may want to refer back to this, but us talking in a room, a normal conversation is about 60 decibels. Anything above 85 decibels at a prolonged level could cause hearing damage. Fireworks or gunshots, that's the loudest at about 140 decibels. So our ambient level at night in a suburban neighborhood is about 40 to 45. Any questions on that?
Just to point out and echo that I do think 60 is probably the most important number here. As I was looking here, I have a sound meter here, and right now with me talking right next to it, it's around 60. I was taking yours at more like 48 to 50.
Yeah.
No one would find this level of conversation objectionable if it was in their neighbor's backyard at 2 o'clock in the morning. So I think 60 is kind of the anchor number that we need to think about as a baseline to go from there.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
How come jet planes are less than gunshots? That's just a...
I mean, they're very quiet jet planes, you know, they have, I don't know.
Yes. Well, I just,
Maybe they're like Tesla version, yeah.
oh, well, all right.
Also different types of gunshots.
So many other communities, especially the local ones, do not put a decibel level in their noise ordinance. They have something that is very objective. Subjective, sorry. And what we're trying to do is make it clear and concrete what would be a violation. So we don't want to say anything that annoys a neighbor. That doesn't really help us and makes it difficult for a police officer to enforce it. So that is what I have on as a background information.
Just go back to that slide for a minute, because that is obviously quite different from what we have in place now. I mean, that is what I would refer to as it's sort of a lot of wiggle room for law enforcement and ordinance folks to make decisions on their own.
Yeah, and I think we do want to leave the police officers with discretion.
Yeah.
Obviously, it helps to have a firm number, but if it's little kids having a birthday party, they don't need to go cite them for, you know, having fun.
Sure.
But it's the same sort of discretion that we give them on a range of
on
topics.
speeding tickets, on anything, yes,
I don't think
exactly.
anyone has I certainly have no problem with that.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, I think we all agree on that. So let me pull up what the proposed ordinance is, and we can kind of go through it little by little and see if there's any things that we need to adjust. And also, I will point out, you know, we didn't intend for this to be a final draft version for you to adopt or to really have a lot of, you know, we're looking for your feedback tonight. We want to take your feedback here and come back with a better ordinance that we can all work together on. So to start off, we have some of these definitions. I think these are probably appropriate. What is probably going to be the most difficult thing for us to decide upon is what the decibel levels are going to be. So in here we have shall not exceed 60 decibels during the hours of 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. and shall not exceed 50 decibels between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. Right now, it's even less than that. It's 55 decibels during the day and 40 decibels at night. That is a little confusing because it also had the ambient thing in it. So these numbers in here, 60 and 50, are probably on the low side, like John was saying. If someone is, you know, talking in their backyard and you're sitting on your back deck, probably not going to have a problem with that. But if it got above that to, say, 70 decibels, you might have an issue.
Well, I'm sorry, don't
go ahead.
And the other thing, this also specifies measured at the property line. I'll give you one simple test that I did at home, and it was with respect to a specific email that I got from someone talking about leaf blowers. So I measured my leaf blower standing right next to it. It's a battery-powered one, 70 decibels. I walked 40 feet away, which was the edge of the property, and it was down to 40 decibels, which is exactly what the formula would predict based on how sound decays over a period of time. One of the things that I like about this is that when the police receive a noise report, they don't necessarily have to go to the person who reported it. They don't have to go into their house. They can go to the property line. And again, I had a prior meeting with Chief Webb and with Jeff Sanborn before the time that Barb and I met with all of staff. And I think, Chief, if I'm quoting you correctly, you said you'd rather have an absolute standard. It's just easier for you guys rather than doing arithmetic at 1:30 in the morning. And so I think probably 60 is too low. Maybe not, because we're measuring it at the property boundary. You have to think about, you know, two things. One, some of what we hear related to STRs, but this ordinance is not an STR ordinance. It applies to everybody in their backyard. That kind of noise. The second is, and we talk about construction and maintenance, the guy who's got the leaf blower out maybe, or the lawnmower, is going to go right to the boundary. And to be perfectly honest, 60 decibels is less than you can buy any leaf blower on the market of any kind at the moment. So I think we do need to be a little bit careful that we don't constrain businesses operating here while we're trying to come up with something that is reasonable and enforceable by the police department.
Sure. And Glenn or Alex, you can feel free to jump in whenever as well. Maybe it's 75 during the day and 60 at night. These are numbers we can play with and we can look at, but...
So what happens if there's a construction company that needs to use a jackhammer?
Yep. So we have, that next bullet point is for construction and maintenance activities. So one of these is also, if it's a sustained level. Alex actually suggested maybe we don't have this section in there and we deal with it as it's currently written in our ordinance, which gives a lot more flexibility and discretion to the police officer to deal with that.
Say that again?
I'd agree there.
Say that again, I missed that.
So in our existing ordinance, Alex is recommending that we stick with that language, which gives more discretion to the police officer or who's ever enforcing
Relative to
this
construction noise.
for construction only.
What do we have now? We have
There's time limits. There's not necessarily a sound threshold, but there are days of the week that is allowed. There's times of the day. There's opportunities for construction activity to begin or operate with outside of those hours, but that gives the ability for myself, the inspections team, or members of the technical review committee that would be responsible for the inspection of the work that day, like for a concrete pour and a summer day where they need to start a little bit earlier, or at least get the equipment on site a little bit earlier. And we look and see how many, for instance, how many residential properties are nearby, or how close they would be, or if there's requested work on a holiday or a weekend, is there an activity or community event or church event that may be impacted by the construction. So that seems to really work well, and I'm not aware of any real complaints.
reasonableness level, yeah.
Correct.
So are you suggesting that maybe we don't need a construction paragraph?
Yes.
Okay, I understand that. That makes sense. And if a construction company was doing something where they thought they were going to run afoul of that, they could get special dispensation for a day or whatever they thought.
And there is a process for that.
And they would still be subject to nuisance noise. So even if they're doing and participating in valid business activity, i.e. building a house or a business, if they're running a radio that's very loud at 120 decibels while, people accept that there's probably going to be an air compressor going, or jackhammer. I mean, as long as they're not riding the jackhammer like a pogo stick and actually doing what they're supposed to do, anything that they were doing outside of their valid business purpose would fall under the nuisance noise.
Yeah, I got a problem with the construction paragraph. It doesn't sound like it's necessary.
I concur with that.
That's what we have highlighted in yellow. Is that needed? So,
yeah, but why? I have a question about automobile vehicle noise.
Yeah, go ahead.
First of all, I mean, does this mean that other than the hours of 10 to 5 a.m., you can have the loudest motorcycle possible, or you can come through the village with jack brakes, and you know how they sound. It seems like it's strange to have a limit on certain times of the day, and only at night can you make noise.
Right, and that's good feedback. We could switch it so...
Pretty loud vehicles in this area occasionally coming through neighborhoods. Well, I even had an additional issue to that, which is those people typically are not sitting in a parking space revving their engine for 10 minutes. They're on the move. It's not that I don't support the idea of this, but is it enforceable?
I think this would be more dealing with radios, loud bass, loud music, when people are sitting in. For example, sometimes you'll have visitors to the hospital sitting in the far back parking lot, and it's disturbing people in Village Acres. There's already some state statutes about altering your muffler, and we've dealt with that a few times because there's times when people come off the circle from my house in number 6. If they have a loud muffler, I can hear them until they're almost to Carthage, on a quiet night. So there's already some rules in place on those. This would mainly be for those loud noise systems.
Do these rules, Chief, do they fall into the general rules that we have for basically traffic rules coming from the state?
The mufflers do.
Yeah, so you have a motorcycle you're talking about, you can hear it all the way to Carthage.
If it's altered, so yeah, there's some gray area there, so it's hard to, it's hard to track anyway, because unless it comes by you, by the time you get to where they were, they're gone.
Yeah.
And so it's tough, and it does happen. I don't think it's constant, but it does happen. I think since there's been some change in how, back when, a few years ago, when people were really into the squatted trucks and the mufflers, that was louder. I've noticed it's less now, but it does still happen.
Any other questions on that part?
Well, yeah, I'm trying to put myself in the place of a person who complains about the noise. Will the changes that we're talking about, will they feel they're a little more empowered if we make these changes, or are they going to feel like it's going to be a little tougher on them, and they'll have to tolerate more noise?
I think they certainly won't have to tolerate more noise, because the way it was previously written, when we would go out and do an ambient and have to add the ambient onto the noise, you could have people at almost 100 decibels and sometimes not be in violation because of the way that was worded and the way it was enforced. And I think with what Doug did in explaining how noise is an aggregate, not a 1 + 1, that gives us a lot more leeway in how we enforce it. And I think it'll give the person that files a complaint about noise more redress in it, because we will have a definite number. Then we don't have to go, well, yeah, it's 65 decibels, but there's a 35 ambient, so since we're not at 100, sorry. And so I think it'll give us a better tool in helping assist with that.
Measurable objective. A single measurable objective.
That's right. And I've talked to our officers too now, that even if even under the current ordinance, if it isn't currently a violation, but subjectively you would be irritated by it, maybe just politely talk to them and say, this is bothering some neighbors, because we haven't had an incident where we've engaged with anyone that was in violation where they were rude to the officers. They were usually pretty embarrassed by it because that wasn't their intent. And so I felt like because of those contacts, we could feel comfortable in making a soft approach on that. Now, if they tell us to go pound sand, we have to go pound sand at that time. But I think this change will also help us. And even if someone's borderline, we could let them know, you're getting pretty close. Let's not ruin your golf trip.
Well, the only suggestion I would make is that when we finalize this and adopt it, that we have a good communication effort on the website and in the newsletter, so that residents are aware of the changes and they have a little bit of a roadmap of what they should do if they feel there's a problem.
It would be my hope that this is both easier to enforce because it establishes sort of an arbitrary standard, still giving discretion to the officer to determine why. Kids in a pool on a 95-degree day at 3 o'clock in the afternoon is different than 1:30 in the morning. And also the ability, as you say, to just make the soft approach. Hey guys, it's 1:30 in the morning. Can you take it inside or turn the boombox off, whatever. I think it hopefully works both ways. That would be my hope.
Yeah, I think that's our goal, and hopefully we'll get there with the revision. Just a couple other things that we may want to consider. We have on here permits for special events. As it's currently written, it says that would go to the village council. I would actually recommend that we probably change that to the village manager's office. I think we could take out some of the potential political issues with that and have it done administratively through my office.
I support that.
Yeah, where is that in the?
It's this under special exemptions, number 2.
Oh, number 2. Okay.
C2.
Got it.
And then under enforcement and compliance, the penalties is one area that we were considering. Do we want to have this ratchet up over time? I think that's actually a pretty good approach. If there's someone that's a consistent violator, we'll have the ability to really go after them. Any concerns with that?
No, I think it's important that our residents see that there are consequences for people who do violate this ordinance. I think that's a question they always ask.
One suggestion would be just to change the wording that violators can or may be. If we say shall, then we do have to cite parents for the kids being loud in the pool. And what we would base that on is if it's just wild and blowing the standard out, of course they're going to get cited. But if it's a borderline thing and we warn them and we don't have to come back, then we consider the matter handled. I mean, compliance is the goal, not necessarily court dates or fines. So but as worded now, we would have no choice in whether or not, or how everything's treated. And then the rule of unintended consequences would apply to, like Doug mentioned, the kids have a birthday party and a clown with a boombox and it hits 70 decibels, and then, you know, we're out there popping animal balloons and ruining everybody's day.
I support that. That's some discretion. Ma'am.
Before we leave that, issue I have is that as a homeowner and a resident of Pinehurst, if I exceed the noise violation, then I become a violator and I have to pay the penalty. And I live here, so you can find me if I don't pay my fine. And I assume you're not collecting at the time. So what happens when we have a violation in a property that is a short-term rental, and the next day they get cited, they have exceeded the noise levels, but the next day they leave town?
It's a civil penalty, so, I mean, we would have to essentially sue them, is how that would go.
Can we not hold?
Is the next week, the same thing could happen with a completely different group of people, as well as the following week and so on. And it appears to me that the whole point of the ordinance is to stop people from doing it. And certainly I would only do it one time. But if we have no way of dealing with repeat offenders, then it doesn't really solve the problem.
Can I just ask one question? Can we work on what Barb is raising, which is a very good issue, by defining violators to include the property owner in lieu of a tenant who may be staying there?
More of a Mike Newman question of whether we can
Let's ask him
apply.
that.
On the civil side, I would say probably, because when we have the conversation about stoplight cameras and things like that, you're holding the owner of the car responsible, not necessarily the driver, because it's not always the same. So maybe, but I haven't been to law school. I've just been to court a lot. But as far as the only thing I would say is on this is whatever this, however this is decided on how it will be handled the same for everybody. So if it's charging people with misdemeanors, then residents are getting charged just like visitors. We can't treat people differently under the law.
I understand that. As a resident, though, I'm going to learn my lesson. This is a deterrent. For someone who is here temporarily, 1 or 2 nights, it's not a deterrent. And it's not a deterrent to the property owner to do anything about it because they're paying no penalty. But the residents next to them is paying the penalty because we know we have properties that are
I think, that's just a better conversation for the attorney because
I agree with
hypothetical.
I agree that we need to explore that out.
We can talk to village council on that. Also, you know, if there was a residence and they're permanent residents and they have kids that are always making noise, you know, maybe eventually it's not the 18-year-old kid that gets the violation, maybe it's the parent. So that might be an analogous situation.
Why? They're holding parents responsible in other states for more serious crimes.
In some areas, there's nuisance abatement laws that allow you with certain activities at residents to hold the owner of the property.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
But as a practical matter, if we find someone in violation, are you handing them a ticket, so to speak, as you would for
yeah,
speeding? or
their
something?
name, address, identification, everything. It's not just it would not be, because we're having to order these, so we're making them specific for this. And so it would not just be a slip of paper that says you owe the village $100. It would be, even though it's not a North Carolina misdemeanor ticket, it would still have all the same information to where we have their identifiers.
But Barb, to your point, I think we'll look and see what we can do to address your concern. It's a valid
even
concern,
if it's even if it's something in the way of informing a property owner who is non-resident that these things have been going on, or some way to report that this is, there has to be an equitable level of accountability on all sides.
Yeah, and I think
that because the violator is the perpetrator instead of the property owner, the residents get punished, and technically, anyone, or at least who's in a rental property, just goes off scot-free.
Yeah, I think we just have to make sure that we can treat every property the same. So, but yeah, let us do a little research and see what we come up with on that.
Please do. I agree with that. Okay. Good point, Barbara.
Next, coming down to exceptions, Alex pointed out that there are no variances, there's just exceptions. So we'll clean up some language here and come up with maybe a process on how someone would request that. And does it really need to go to village council? That might be something else that could be done by the village manager's office.
That makes sense for the village manager, no. But that's not dissimilar to some of the special permit requests we get for other events. Should be largely the same.
Right.
Put that on your shoulders, Doug.
Yeah, and we do have a process for requesting like temporary special events, so that could be maybe part of it. All right, that's all we have on the nuisance noise. Any?
One item I do, when we get to the final version adopted, I mentioned earlier a good communications plan. I think it's very worthwhile to consider whether or not the particular properties that have had requests for the police to visit the property and so forth, whether or not there was an outcome, whether the decibel level crashed through the barricades or dismissed it. We might want to think of sending a letter to those property owners, alerting them that the Village of Pinehurst recently made a change to the ordinance, and so that they are notified beforehand, and rather than this, oh, I didn't know it was changed, because that property owner may not live here. So let's think about that in the communication plan.
Yes, yeah, we can communicate it to everyone, owners and full-time residents, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on to our lighting ordinance. So there are some concerns with the existing ordinance, specifically holiday lights and how we really only allow them in December, and there's lots of other holidays, other religious holidays. So we wanted to address that. Also, the ordinance as it's written addresses how these lights are, how they're shaded, where they're focused on, but it doesn't really get to the result of we don't want light trespassing from one property onto another to a degree that it becomes a nuisance. It really didn't actually state that. So that's something we're trying to address in this ordinance revision. So just so everyone's clear, lumens is what the measure of brightness at the source of the light. So a 40-watt light bulb is approximately 450 lumens, and a 100-watt light bulb is 1,600 lumens. And foot candles is next. So a foot candle is the measurement of light that's reaching the ground. Also you may hear the word lux. 10 lux is approximately 1 foot candle. So if you hear both those, that's what it means. But a foot candle for like a general office, this is probably about 40 in this room. And, you know, if you're doing lots of intricate work, you want to probably be about 100. Full moon is 1 to 3 foot candles. So depending on, you know, if there's cloud cover or not, that's what it is. And a typical 60-watt lamp at about 800 lumens will be 0.1 foot candles 25 feet away. So just a little, so you can understand that. So light is measured linearly. So we kind of have an issue that if there's ambient light from your own porch, but you're complaining about the light coming from your neighbor's property, your light and their light are coming together to come up with the problem. So there's a few ways we can deal with that. So for determining what is ambient light, if we are able to go out there and say, hey, turn off your light so we can measure what the actual ambient light is, that would be the easiest and the most accurate. But maybe an officer will just have to be able to shield the light on one side so we can try to get an ambient reading. Or we can just have them assume that ambient light at night is going to be 1 foot candle, and anything above 2 foot candles is what gets to us to a violation. So we're trying to work through some of those issues, and maybe we can just go through the actual ordinance.
So what if we have them go take a light measurement and there's a full moon out?
Yes. So a full moon.
That's 3 right there, potentially, no clouds.
It could be, yes. So maybe our foot candle violation is not 1 above ambient, maybe it's 2. When I was measuring last night in front of my house, right below my porch light on the ground was 2.7. When I walked out to the property line along the road, it was like 0.01, but last night was really dark, overcast, not much moon. So coming up with the right foot candle number is going to be a little bit of a challenge.
And just in general, the idea that focusing more on what is hitting the property on a foot candle measurement, that makes a whole lot more sense to me than the lumens and worrying about that. But as this goes forward, I think it's also important that we have a reasonable amount on there that's not too draconian in there. The intent is to stop malicious or inappropriate behaviors.
It could be, I think even up to 5 might not be an issue, but we can measure some of those and try to figure out what is the appropriate level.
Not dismissing that as an idea, and I have no idea what the number should be. The complaint are when these lights are coming directly into somebody's house from a neighboring house. It's 6 inches over my property line, and they got I think that's where the existing ordinance, where we still find complaints relative to the existing ordinance. Is that fair?
I think that could be part of what the issue that we're having with our existing ordinance and inability to cite anyone for any violation. But it's more broad that there are specific lights that are just outright exempt from having to meet those provisions, whether or not they're shining in or on a house or a property or not.
Okay.
I mean, you have somebody who approaches a house where they've got a motion detector on there, pulling in the garage or whatever, you're going to have a significant amount of light that goes on for a period of time. Okay, got it. Maybe that's 11 o'clock at night. That's a reasonable item.
One of those in Michigan, yes.
Yeah, nobody's going to complain about that. And I don't think there's going to be a call to the police to say, hey, turn off your motion detector light. This is going to be, I imagine, rarely used, but we're trying to stop inappropriate behaviors here without being too draconian, because we also don't want the knee-jerk reaction of somebody saying, okay, well, you said it was 1 foot candle power or whatever it is, and they now become the light police for the village.
And my impression, Alex, I think you said when Barb and I were talking with staff, we amended this ordinance either last year or the year before, and so now we're even trying to get the last 2% that we didn't cover with this ordinance. We've got something that works pretty well for most people, but not always.
Yeah, and actually, one thing that we've been batting around as we've discussed this, like the way the ordinance is drafted, and our current ordinance talks about as well, is like light at the source. And kind of, do we care what the light at the source is? What we care about is the spillage over into the other property. And so I think that's what we want to measure, and that's what we want to enforce.
I agree with that.
I also think that they need to remove the entire holiday aspect of it. And so if we have a holiday season in December. what happens if my holiday season happens to be in,
No, I understand.
you know, March.
Yeah,
So,
and I think we should set the foot candle high enough that, you know, someone with fairly significant holiday lights isn't going to set it off for their neighbor, but someone who has bright spotlights that are always shining in their neighbor's bedroom, that will affect us. So we'll have to come up with that.
Don't we
middle of the
typically
line road.
require that holiday lights have to be off at 10 o'clock anyway?
well, that's going with this ordinance now, okay? And I think that that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm getting at, is to remove the holiday thing. I've got no problem. You decide to have all the holiday lights for whatever holiday you're doing, but turn them off at 10. That's
Like
reasonable.
Groundhog's Day.
Yeah, so I think we have 1 foot candle measurement for before 10 p.m. and then one for after 10 p.m.
So the Pinehurst Griswolds have to turn their lights off at 10.
You know, I just want to, I'm trying to make sure I got my notes right. On the exceptions and variances to the noise issue, we were going to replace a written request to the village council to a written request to the village manager.
Right.
Thank you.
And we do a similar thing for the final version of the light ordinance.
Okay.
I concur with
If
that.
someone's having a wedding or something and they, well, I can't imagine in a situation where you really would need it, but at least there's a process for it. So
In this case, we are advising the property owner of the violation. Okay,
yes,
because we're not going to try to find out who turned on the light. Right, okay, okay.
So I just want to ask Chief Webb, do you feel comfortable with this change, knowing kind of what some of the situations are and that this would be enforceable?
Yeah, I think that the complaints are coming from, as Dr. Morgan mentioned, the more malicious shining spotlights. I'm not aware of them. They may exist. I'm not aware of anybody complaining because someone had a strand of lights out for any particular holiday or a display in their yard. Everything that I've been contacted about or read up on has dealt with malicious direct interruptions to their sleep and ability to enjoy their home.
Any other feedback on this? This one is going to take a little more cleaning up because we'll kind of take out all of that light source, the lumens at the source. We'll remove that and only focus on the spillage over into other properties.
We want have another meeting for action on these, you think?
Yeah, we'll meet internally as staff, come up with a more formal draft and kind of what we think should be the final version, and we'll bring it back to you.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds like a plan. Any other comments on these two items? Okay. Let us move on to the discussion on resident-submitted traffic circle alternative ideas. I think during our discussions, let me get to my notes here. We've had quite a few ideas over the last year and a half, 2 years from residents. And Councilman Farrell did a very nice job of putting together sort of a Excel spreadsheet, and that captured those that the residents seem to most often suggest. And I had, upon reading that, I tried to put together a list of, I would say, the 7 most popular with our residents. Maybe we ought to sort of work off that and run down that list of ideas and see what people's thoughts are, and then see what type of action we may or may not want to pursue. So let me pull that up. Okay, there we go. The first item, and we heard someone mention it tonight, and it's been mentioned in the past, and it was it was our idea 18 months ago. The lane dividers, which seem to have been quite a hit with our residents, no pun intended there, whether or not there could be additional lane dividers. I recall someone saying that there would be a problem with too many additional ones because of the necessity of being able to, for certain size vehicles to turn around that circle with lane dividers. But it wasn't ruled out that maybe in some portions, it might be, again, a little bit of a additional safety item to include. I don't know what other people have heard, but I welcome your comments and thoughts. They seem to be unobtrusive as far as visually. And like I say, I've just heard good comments about it's made sense. And I believe they've cut down on the lane hoppers who like to make that left-hand turn after they got in the short lane. So any thoughts there?
Mr. Mayor, are you suggesting that we put them on some of the other lakes coming in?
It's wherever they might practically work.
Yeah.
You know, that's all. I mean, some of it could be on the road approaching. Maybe there's somewhere around there where it looks like they stop the lane dividers a little earlier than they might go to. So obviously we'd defer to them. Yeah. But they took advantage of our suggestion a while back, and they found them useful, and then they got kudos for them from people.
My observation is that although they're not the most attractive thing in the world, they do prevent people from running down one lane and jumping over, which I used to see all the time, to tell you the truth. But now that isn't prevalent. I wish there were a slightly different type of lane divider, to be honest with you. Maybe a 4-inch curb rather, or a 5-inch curbing, but they could run right over that. I'm not sure. But anyway, it seems to be doing what it was designed to do, and surprisingly, they're still in place. This part.
I haven't seen a row of them get mowed over.
I saw one. I didn't see it getting mowed, but I saw it, on the ground. But other than that,
I'm very pleased, I guess you could say, that they're still there.
Someone asked a question earlier in the day about, is there any data? I've not seen any data yet on crashes from the DOT. The statistics that they used in the run-up to the CFI proposal stopped in May of 2023, which was before they were installed.
Yeah, they didn't get installed until January. January 2024 was when they were installed.
9-10 months ago.
So
well, there's still a steady stream of accident reports from the police department. I suspect most of them are just property damage, rear enders, and so forth.
Rear enders, yeah.
And hopefully they aren't related to someone trying to jump the lane, so to speak.
Yeah. So again, this suggestion really just dovetails with the suggestion we made in January of 2023. So I would put it down as a likely addition to any new list we might want to send. We heard tonight from several people, and we've heard it before, and that is the lowering the speed limit. And then is there even a sign in the circle about the speed limit?
There's not.
And I've driven around looking for one, and there isn't, but I'm not sure if we know why there isn't. Any ideas?
Why isn't what?
There a speed limit sign in the circle.
In the circle itself. One person, I forget where I heard this was, you don't want to have them looking at anything else. You want them driving in the circle. I find that weak, but.
Yeah, typically also they're supposed to be on the right-hand side. So if
good luck with
you wouldn't be able to see them.
Other than you could have signs before you get to the circle saying the speed limit in the circle is 25 miles an hour or 20 or whatever we choose.
That seems reasonable. I think having a speed limit before there would be appropriate to, I think there's one that's a suggested speed limit coming in from one direction, if I remember correctly. I think it's a 15,501, if I remember right.
It's variable, you're right. I mean, it's 35 miles an hour on Midland, and yet it's higher than that on
it's 45 on the
45.
other three. Yeah.
And I don't know what 15,501, maybe even higher than 45 coming
I think it's 45.
It's 45.
I've seen 45 signs on that.
I actually added some columns to Jack's spreadsheet, and of the 37 people who wrote in, 10 of them suggested speed, and that was far and away the most of any other solution.
I wonder what the typical, I guess I don't look at my speedometer when I'm driving in the circle,
No,
but
I don't
I wonder what it really is. Like,
I don't either.
maybe I'll try next time.
A
And I'll
couple
run over one of those
observations.
barriers.
A couple observations. Just you talked about the lane dividers. I've heard a story. I wasn't there witnessing it, but my understanding is that they did get mowed down one time. I think it was one of our fire trucks that went through that. Carlton may be able. He's shaking his head up and down, but they're designed to pop back up. Okay, so if they do get mowed down, they're supposed to pop back up. And one of our emergency vehicles had to get through.
Sure.
Stop traffic, and they took that, and so I'm getting a head nod, so at least I wasn't getting false information. Second thing on there is we're asking questions about how many accidents. We're asking questions about speed limits that are on there. I think some of these questions can be answered as long as we're communicating with NCDOT on a regular basis, because I've heard before also when we say we reduce the speed going into it and you're going to increase the efficiency of people entering into the circle, but you're not actually going to improve the flow because now you've decreased the speed. I'm not a traffic engineer, okay, but I would be curious as to how NCDOT's traffic engineers view this. Is it going to be of a help or not? Because a lot of people have suggested, a lot of the suggestions we provided a couple years ago were not adopted. And I don't think they were not adopted, double negative there, because of NCDOT just not wanting to work with us. I think it was that they didn't feel they would be effective in helping the situation.
I think they took up what they viewed as the low-hanging fruit.
Correct. I view that too.
And so who knows after what the discussions that have been held and what other new traffic management information people have. There might be some things that didn't look like low-hanging fruit before, but might have improved. And
my point on what I was discussing here goes back to a lot of these can be addressed by regular meetings with NCDOT.
Right.
And if we don't have the answer, why not? We should be meeting with them. We should be on a regular basis.
We have a request to meet with them, and they're going to get back to us in 60 days.
In the 431-page technical memorandum that was referenced earlier, they do say that it will not improve flow. Simply lowering the speed limit to 20 or 25 will not improve flow during peak hours.
Correct. And I'm referencing that. I'm not going to quote it because I don't have it memorized. But certainly it's one of the take-home points I had from it.
Okay. Somewhat related to that, and we did have some email traffic among staff and council, was this skipping down to the authorized, I use the word authorized use of speed cameras, because what I remember in the email discussion was that someone came up with an example that one town in the state had sought authorization from the legislature to do such a thing, adopt some cameras, and they were denied, shall we say. So I gather the state has to provide that leeway. Do you know anything more about this, Doug? Or?
Well, yeah, it's currently not allowed under current state law, so we could request special legislation or request that it changes for the whole state, but yeah, currently we're not allowed to do that.
I'm just wondering,
There has been local bills that has authorized certain towns, cities to use speed cameras. Whether they actually have or not, I'm not sure. But I take speed cameras just for enforcement and giving tickets versus using speed cameras or some type of speed measuring device to change the flow as more promising in the long term.
Yeah, I would hope that a speed camera would modify a driver's behavior. I mean, I know it, where they were authorized where I used to live, I know it modified my behavior when I got that photo in the mail. So,
well, the other choice, you can just put up signs, a speed camera's in use, and of course, whether they are not.
Yeah,
this is like you go through Maryland, they always have a state trooper car with a dummy in it, every so often, and you slow down considerably.
Well, I suppose then the options are whether or not we contact our legislators and see if that's something they would want to seek through appropriate legislation in the General Assembly, which is one thing, or we could simultaneously ask NCDOT if they think it would be helpful. If they say, it doesn't work, or we're not fond of it, then maybe we don't. But how do people feel about that? In other words, trying to get permission.
Right.
But
I would feel very comfortable reaching out to DOT and saying, we're considering this. Before we go through all the hoops, do you think it actually would make a difference and improve flow?
okay. Going back up there, the item number 3 on this list is something we had mentioned in the earlier letter in January 2023. Rumble strips, not the big speed bumps, but rumble strips approaching the circle. I drove around the village, and there are 3 places we have rumble strips in this village: Highway 5, Morganton Road, and Page Road. Now there may be other locations, but they're there. And the reason I remember them is because I have to go over them. So I just think they serve as a attention getter for a driver. If I hit a rumble strip in driving, and I might put down my phone if I have it up in my face. I may certainly look at my speedometer and see if I should, slow a little. So that's my thought there. What do others think?
You're considering those on the approaches or within the circle?
I would consider them more so on the approaches, but if I would certainly raise it with DOT as into both places, because they may say, it doesn't work there, but it might work on a road as you're coming into the circle so that you're more attentive as you get near the actual circle.
I don't think we have anything to lose by suggesting that. The accident statistics don't suggest that it's a big problem of people actually entering at 45 miles an hour in rush hour and running into somebody. But I don't think we have anything to lose by suggesting it, and it is an attention getter.
Yeah, I think maybe a good approach is like Pat mentioned, that we ask DOT, hey, would these help in any way, and see what their response is. Yeah, the approaches, I feel like people are driving slow anyway, but maybe somewhere along the route, if to get people's attention, it might be helpful. So we can ask them what
Certainly low cost and can be done.
Yeah, it's not a. It's easier than putting up the lane dividers, but and perhaps it might be useful coming off the circle as you come to the hospital, just to get people a little more alert, because you just don't know who's in a rush to get turned into the hospital, and you want their full attention.
We could just not fill any potholes, and then serves as rumble strips.
Yes, and would save money too. Yes, that's one approach.
I think that goes into the bad idea pile.
Okay.
Thank you. I've got no idea, and I've got no problem in providing a lot of these ideas up to NCDOT. The key, again, is we're working with NCDOT to come up with solutions. So if they have evidence that rumble strips are going to help, then by gosh, let's put them in.
Okay.
If they're not going to help, let's not put them in.
The other item, I do think earlier signage along the approaching roads, might help even a little more. I think the signage they took us up on and put up there only, which is very good. I don't know how many people that's helped steer away from having to be a lane hopper, but if you give people, especially the visitors, an earlier notice to get in the right lane to do X or left lane to do Y, I don't see any downside to it. They can put some attractive signage. It can be small. And again, it's a type of suggestion, and I'm sure they probably have some rules of the road as to how early you should start a sign effort and should not. So I would.
There are other types of signs that I've seen used that describe, right, if you're in the right lane, you're going to be expected to do this. If you're in the left lane, you can do the following. And they're more the size of speed limit signs, and they're posted in advance of entry to the.
I've seen that before too.
Rather than everything up on top.
Okay.
Here's a suggestion about using, rather than yield, use merge. I don't know whether there is such a thing.
I don't know either. I have heard that from various residents. Instinctively, I think yield is safer than merge.
Because
But
it
I
goes-
don't have data.
But
There's probably a uniform ordinance or manual that describes what it should be.
I think you're right.
This can be part of the ongoing conversation. To
Right.
me, merge suggests that maybe I can just go right in and not stop. Whereas typically, traffic in the circle has right-of-way.
Yes, right.
I would suggest we put it on there only because I was driving around the circle several times, just at 25 miles an hour, just to see what was going on. And invariably, in the, like, 6 times I went around, when I got to the 15501 merge, or yield or whatever, people had an opportunity to come out and merge and did not. And so, and at 25 miles an hour that I was going. So I think there might be something to this that is causing people to be afraid. But maybe a merge would encourage more.
And something that Jack had mentioned, that was mentioned by one of the speakers, of lowering some of the vegetation. I mean,
That's
if
a
you're in
good
a
point,
pickup truck
yes.
or in a,
Yep.
my wife's Suburban, you can see just fine. If you're in a traditional sedan, they're pretty, but you can't see through them.
Yeah, I have a stick with me if you want to see what it looks like from my car. You can't see a thing. I don't recommend we put it up, but that's on the 211 merge. I can't see any cars until I'm actually at the circle. And coming from the south on 15501, that vegetation is over 5 feet tall now. Now, it's a little back from the circle, but it's still, you need as much sight line as you can get, when you're getting into that circle situation.
And they're also built up, the beds themselves are raised, so it's the vegetation plus another foot or foot and a half.
I think that sight line is a significant factor, at least I think so.
Doug, are we the ones trimming those? Okay.
Well,
Village.
we will be, yeah.
Okay. No, I just didn't know if the state had any
Yeah,
responsibility.
they were until I forget when, but now
Okay.
we're in charge of those.
Or whatever we plant should be planted, number one, farther back possibly, and number two, the selection of vegetation should be such that it never grows more than a foot, foot and a half max.
Carlton's very interested in this conversation.
I know,
So, yeah.
right.
Okay. I do think it affects you based a little bit on the type of vehicle you drive.
Us people
mean-
driving normal vehicles, sedans,
Yeah.
we can't see a thing.
I know, I'm just telling the people who are riding up higher, when I've gotten in conversations with them, say, I can see fine. I understand. I understand what you can see, but those of us in sedans, it is a little.
Us working folks in pickup trucks not having the problem.
No, that's right.
Well, we restrict the
That's right.
circle to only certain types of vehicles, that's the other choice.
Okay. This is another issue that I think it's more than just us as far as the village. It's mentioned tonight by one person, I recall, and that was the increase of police presence, whether it be village, county, or state. Now, because I don't think, it's not our road. So I don't think it all should fall on our village police force. They do, as far as I can tell, a very good job based on the daily report. They issue traffic citations, verbal, written, and actual citations. And I don't know what the number is, but a good amount of it is in that circle area. But since it's the county and the state, is there a way to have some sort of coordinated effort where during a peak hour one day and peak hour another day, the county takes up some of that and then the state can do it on one day? We're not looking for 24/7. I think we're looking for those peak hours where the presence might have more of an impact. Maybe you can talk to
Yeah,
Glenn
let me
about
talk to
that.
Glenn. I don't know how much of a priority will be for other jurisdictions, but we can see what we can do and
That's why I'm
try to
saying,
influence it.
ask them for a day, a week, on a weekday.
Are you talking specifically traffic in the actual circle or approaching or all
Well,
of them?
I'm thinking more in the circle in the immediate approach area. Now, I don't want them going all the way down to 11, but just, as you get close to the circle, the presence may make a difference.
Yeah, I also wonder if we can get any data measurement for speed within the circle. NCDOT might have the tubes or something that we can measure it with.
I think the latest study they had on there was about 30 miles an hour is what's going on. That's what's occurring.
Yeah.
In the circle itself?
In the circle itself, yeah, about 30 miles an hour.
Okay, well, that's an interesting.
I would guess more in non-peak hours. Peak hours is probably about as much as you can do. That's a guess.
I would agree with that. I mean, people are going to go faster if they.
One of the conversations I had on this topic with Jeff Sanborn was a problem is the size of the circle itself. Because it is as big as it is, some would feel comfortable driving 40 or 45, traffic permitting. Well,
those
that's
sporty
okay. That's
sedans
why
can probably make it like 45 or something, I bet.
But that's why we have limits, people would say they could drive 45 down Midland Road as well. It's straight.
One of the commentators tonight made the statement that this is one of the largest circles in the country. Now, I perhaps it's the 6 acres of it that's what makes it large. But did anyone else have a takeaway about that?
Implication is the radius is the largest.
Yeah.
Okay. I found that fascinating.
I don't know if that's true, but I think that's what is.
Yeah, I think that was Peter Mamazich.
Yes, Peter.
And
2,000 foot
discussed that.
diameter.
And biggest one in the country is what he said. Per
Yeah,
my
okay.
notes on there. And yeah, that's a factor. Also highlighted the angle of attack. Basically, you're coming into to the circle being a factor. And again, that all makes sense. And I think it's something that needs to be discussed with NCDOT and see what their thoughts are there. Another comment that came out, and this was from Bob Hammond, that I don't think has been given enough attention, and that's looking at the Western Connector, looking at the big problem we have here in our growth. We have too many cars going into that, and it's progressively increasing. Okay? That's a boil down to the stuff. We need to find ways to divert that traffic out to other areas. Okay? So how are we doing that? And right now, I don't know of anything with NCDOT that's effectively talking about moving the traffic out of coming through the Pinehurst Circle.
Well, one of the things I think should be factored in as they're building out 211 all the way to the west, I gather it is. They're building it, and there's going to be commercial development out there. They're not building it just for homes. And what that tells me will happen is that a lot of people who come this way to do their shopping, they're going to go around the corner if there's some commercial development there and there's a Tractor Supply Company or a Lowe's or Walmart or Harris Teeter. The need to come this way to do those things is lessened. And that's an issue, I think.
As build-out occurs, that may likely be. But that road is a two-way road. It goes both directions. So it's also going to enhance the flow coming this direction. And so pick your company. Walmart decides they want to make sure they're not losing their customers. They want more customers. They throw more sales on or whatever. They're trying to increase the flow to this area versus the other way. So I don't think you can say it's going to actually decrease it with the growth.
Yeah,
okay?
I'm not saying it's to decrease it. I just think that I've never heard it factored in.
Concur. I think a good takeaway from there is growth. You're having an increase in the roads occurring all around us on there. And with that, I think it's fair to assume you're going to have traffic coming in as well as traffic going out increased on there, okay? So this comes back to NCDOT's traffic engineers. They've got the setup to make that happen, to look at it and give us analysis. And we just need to make sure we're communicating on a regular basis with them with these various ideas we have.
Yeah, and I do think we've got to get as solid projection data on population as possible, because what's driving the number of cars is the amount of the population growth.
Correct, and then we've been around and around on the estimates on there. Are they accurate? Are they inaccurate? That kind of stuff, and we need to come together with them and say, okay, this is what we will accept as the expected growth.
Right.
Okay, and to finalize that conversation.
I believe they're in the process in the next month or so, coming to all the municipalities in the state for them to update their projections, which haven't been updated since 2013, of which to make some new calculations as to what that's looking like 30, 40 years from now. So we'll have our input, and we'll see how that changes, because it's the population drives the number of cars, as does the alternate development that'll take place in these these roads that are being widened away from us. Well, we'll get to that, but I do agree with you.
And we still need to have the conversation with them. Ultimately, it's a volume issue. All right, we currently, as of today, have 55,000 cars that go through that circle a day. During peak hours, an hour, there's 33,600 seconds in an hour. You got 6,000 cars going through it in peak traffic hours. That's a lot of cars.
Sure.
Okay, and that's what we're talking about here is the peak. I'm not worried about it. When I'm going through it at 5:30 in the morning, I don't wait at all. Okay, I go right through.
That's right.
Okay,
Yeah,
but
not, Jeff, at all to disagree with you. At one of the SMPO meetings a couple of months ago, someone raised the idea of a Western connector, and the DOT said, there's no STIP for it, it's not on the drawing, doesn't mean it can't come back.
and that's my point. It's not there.
Right.
And that is something that can reduce the traffic coming into it, and I don't know all the specifics for that. I know that was discussed 3 years ago when Pat and I were running. We talked about the Western Connector. Bottom line is, it's a volume issue. How do you decrease the volume going through there? If you're not decreasing the volume, there has to be significant changes as to be able to manage the traffic, especially with the growth that we have coming up.
Yep.
All right, and that's where we need to have a legitimate conversation with NCDOT on a regular basis, so they understand our perspective, that we don't want to destroy the circle. We want to be able to preserve it. We also need to make sure we're moving traffic through, okay?
Mm-hmm. That's what we're looking forward to.
I think Bob Hammond's idea was even bigger than just the Western Connector.
Absolutely.
He was talking about all the development north of us that is occurring, as well as east of us. All of that should be factored into a way to get.
And if I'm not addressing it appropriately, that's what I mean. I think Bob Hammond's comment was exactly spot on. Okay, we have got to develop other areas to be able to handle some of the traffic and not just simply bring it through Pinehurst. You know, we recently had a meeting with some folks, and they were kind of surprised at our size, and we didn't have an interstate. Well, we don't want an interstate.
We don't have one in the county.
That's right.
Forget about Pinehurst. Okay.
Yeah, you got to get out of the county over there to 74.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Okay.
volume issue.
All right, let's go to.
I'd like to go
ahead,
back
Jack.
to what Dr. Morgan talked about, which is access angle. And in this extensive report that Peter prepared, he mentioned quite often the lane entry angle and whether it's an ideal for a circle. And I'm not sure whether I'm not sure what the right angle is, but I can tell you, for example, sometimes in coming down Page Road where it meets Midland, I cannot, my neck no longer goes back there. And there may be an optimum and safe access angle or entry angle that it seems to me DOT could adjust the entry angles because they have the property. All they got to do is move the road slightly as far as how it meets the circle.
That I think that was part of the thing that they cited for the shifted pillow.
Right, but what I'm saying is that I don't see why that shouldn't be a, quote, short-term recommendation that those access angles be studied to make sure that they are optimum relative to safety and merging.
Yeah, that was a very good point Peter brought up because it has not come up a lot into the suggestion box. It is. The other item, and this really relates a little bit to the AI suggestion of Mr. Jeffress, that was the idea of synchronized traffic lights during peak hours. And this is sort of the AI look down the road. And he actually put some of his own best guesstimates as far as dollar values and how long it would take. I don't know about you all, but I have also lived in that world with the synchronized traffic lights from time to time. And you learn to obey them, and traffic keeps moving. They're very common up in the Northeast when you're coming on and to an interstate or a parkway or thruway. So I put it in that group of things, and we could, well, again, it's one of those things to get the experts to say, hey, look, they work where you got this much volume, they don't work like this. I don't know the answer.
Yeah, they addressed metering as one of the alternatives in their most recent report. It didn't include any AI component, but yeah, they said it didn't work, but I think we get a little more details on why, and if there's anything we could maybe alter a little bit to see if it could work.
I think this is an area that really needs to be explored considerably more than just talking about it. Yeah, they're talking about potentially changing speed limits associated with, the volume and the flow and so forth. Maybe adjusting traffic lights upstream, or whatever the right word is, on the approaches. There's a lot of different things that could potentially be done. I think that AI has some promise, no guarantees, but some promise that we should certainly explore.
Well, the idea of intelligent metering, whether driven by AI or some other process, is, I mean, they use it now in the intersections on 15501 and Morganton, and also farther down, where if no one is in the left turn lane, you don't get a left turn green arrow automatically. They just know to not put that up and let other people go, and so that's not being driven by AI. That's a lot
It's
more
just
simple.
sensors, yeah.
That again comes back to the discussion. What's possible? Where is DOT? Not with AI necessarily, but with smarter solutions. If whatever they thought the CFI was going to produce, if we call that 100, if we can find other things that get us to 70 or 80, that may be sufficient given how difficult it is to predict anything out 25 years.
Other items that we heard tonight from residents that we can consider to put in a letter. I think we should copy the approach we did last time. Should draft up some letter that outlines some of these things, there was the mention of the tunnel. There's a mention of the overpass. We probably have those in a separate section because those keep surfacing. I think they're major undertakings, certainly a tunnel, but I just don't know if the time that has passed, and the lead time here is 5 years, if it won't be an attractive idea in a few years. I say I don't know because I don't know, but I think I would categorize these into items that we can actually have an impact in this sort of 6-month to 12-month window. And then there are these other items that would fall into that longer-term bucket. And then, of course, we'll see what their next proposal is, because that's what they're working on, based on the input they got from residents who went to the 3 public meetings they had.
So, Pat, what's the purpose of putting it in a letter versus talking to them in a meeting and discussing it?
Well, I think the purpose is we lay out everything, and we, just like we did last time, and then and then we can follow up with a meeting. We know we're going to have a meeting with them because we've already asked for the meeting. We had asked for a preliminary meeting. I did in the last week in August, but they got back to me and said, that's premature. We need more time to go through these things. They said they would need probably 60 days, which is mid-October.
So you're suggesting that just us talking about it or giving them a list in a meeting is not efficient or not effective, that we need to do a letter to them for it?
I think it's better that they have a document to refer to. And I think it's better, as we found out when they had one last time, we didn't hear anything for months from them. Okay, and then voila, they got in touch with the village manager and said, hey, we can work with you on a couple of these things. I remember hearing it, you were here, you may or may not recall, I remember hearing it and being just blown away. Wow, they actually are reading it, and they did their homework and came back and said, hey, we can take you up on these. And I also think it will demonstrate to our residents that we heard a lot of what they said, and we're not just chatting. We're going to put something in writing, and it can be a nice, well-written letter. It's like the last one. It wasn't, we can work that out.
Yeah, I'm fine with the letter approach, but I'm also offering, I can just reach out to Ruben via email or just call him up and say, hey, these are the ideas we're looking at. Can you respond to some of these? It might get a response faster, but whatever council wants.
Yeah, I'm not for not calling. I just think, let's send a letter and tell them, hey, a letter's coming. So, you know, give us some thoughts, and you can certainly reach out to him before, and some of these he may have an immediate answer on the like the camera one. Yeah. He may just say, it's just a non-starter. Don't bother with it. But on others, he may say, well, we need some little time to think about that and check on it.
The reason I bring this up is because I think we need to change our paradigm in how we're working with NCDOT. Last time we sent a letter to them.
Yes.
Okay, and the last thing we heard is, okay, they've now made a decision, they're going to have the CFI. There was a lack of communication between our council and the NCDOT. I want to enhance that communication, and simply sending a letter does not seem, and I know you said it's not just that, okay? Right. I hear what you're saying. But I want to make sure that we're not going on the same old path of let's send a letter and go back and forth like that. I want us to make sure we're communicating on a regular basis, having meetings with them, having dialogue of information back and forth.
Yeah, well, we've had a request in to have a meeting, and they told us it was going to take 60 days. Fine. We sent the letter last time, and voila, they took some of those things and went with them. Okay. Where we didn't have we never did not meet with them at their request, and I don't know of any time they did not, they turned down a phone call from our village manager. There was nothing of that nature. What I think what occurred here in this recent episode was that after they made those adjustments with the lane dividers and all of a sudden they came up with the shifted pillow, okay? And the shifted pillow on steroids, where all of a sudden eminent domain was now kicking in, and all the trees gone and so forth. So I'm for both. I'm for, what do lawyers call it? Is there a lawyer here? Belt and suspenders. Send them a letter, talk to them, have meetings, but it's good to have a reference point, and that's why I think
that's fine. I think our next communication should be based upon a lot of citizen input. Here are some ideas we would like to discuss with you.
Yes.
Concur.
Let's set up a meeting to discuss these ideas. Some may be practical, others may be a little far out. It doesn't matter. We want to discuss them all.
Bottom line on the whole thing, in the past, in my opinion, I think we have had a relationship with NCDOT that could have been significantly improved, okay? I think it is our responsibility in this council to make sure that we are reaching out to improve that relationship to whatever degree we can, so we can actually represent our constituents as best as possible to move forward. And I want to use a multiple approach on that. And
I agree, but that's a two-way street. That's just, it's not a one-way road.
Oh, I got it.
Okay.
No, there's no question about that.
Okay.
Jeff, you had proposed, I think, back maybe the meeting that when we adopted the resolution, maybe it was before that we, set up a formal subcommittee.
Correct.
I agree with that. I volunteered to serve on it. People want me to. We could reiterate that in the letter, because I think that is a good idea.
Yeah, something we can add
where we intersect with the SNPO at the moment, I don't think we need to worry about that. But
Right, so I'll draft a formal letter, but at the same time, I'm just going to reach out to the Division 8 local director and talk to him about this as well.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
I just have, I'm sorry, I have one more thing. Jim Artman also had a suggestion to install additional road around the circle called a turbo lane. I think he mentioned that today. He said similar to what has been done on Midland Road near Highway 1. So we could add that to our list of suggestions as well.
Okay. Remind me where the turbo lane example is.
Midland Road at US 1.
Oh, is that the mini?
Yeah, that's the mini.
The mini.
Really at NC 22.
22, right below Pine Needles.
Exactly.
Yes.
Okay.
And they studied some turbo approaches already as part of the coming up with the CFI, but no, we can include that. By the way, Jack, I have another proposal that was left in my mailbox today, which I will add to your list, which I would describe as intelligent metering.
AI, okay. All right. We have completed that item, and we can go to item D, which is discussion on the Village Council strategic planning process. And I know we have a document, isn't that right?
Yep. Yeah, so There's a document I put together, kind of a timeline and just a framework for potentially moving forward, making a few changes to our existing process. What I was trying to do is, one, kind of reduce the number of in-person retreat days that we have. I think after 3 days of a meeting, we kind of lose a little focus and it may not be as effective as it could be. But I also, and probably more importantly, want to facilitate council input into the process. So we have employee input meetings in October, but we never really have a council input meeting. So I would like to do that as well. And then the last, we've heard in the past, like, that by the time the public sees it, you know, we've put 6 months of work into it and they don't really feel like they can change anything because we'd have to start all over. So if we can get a little bit of public input earlier on in the process, that would, you know, save us some frustration, but also give the public opportunities to make their voices be heard. So what I'm proposing is that at our next meeting, we kind of have a lay of the land meeting where we review our survey data, we review how we ended FY24 and all of our initiative action plans that were in place at the time. And then at the October 22nd work session, we have an opportunity for council to provide input. Like, I'm hearing that this is a concern by several residents, and you know, you can bring that to us. We can go back, look at some of the data that might be behind that, and we can put that on the agenda to discuss at our regular retreat meeting in either late November or early December. Then our next meeting would be that in November, December, where we would confirm our vision, mission, and values, those things that we've kind of always done. Although I would probably like to have that a much shorter conversation than it has been in the past. It kind of seems to drag out a little bit when not much actually changes. But then us as staff will review all the data from our KPIs, from our survey, from external factors to whatever interest rates might be. All those things are going to weigh into it. We won't discuss all those with you specifically, but if some of them are going to affect what we are going to do as operations, we will bring that up to you, and we will have suggestions for alternatives that we might want to make for changes, for opportunities for improvement in the next budget cycle. So after that, we have typically had a kind of a budget meeting the last day of the retreat, where we take everything that's kind of been given to us and we have a very high level discussion of what the budget might look like for that. So we would do that at our December work session. That also gives Dana a few days to kind of look at it and give us a little more accurate review of what it would be. Then in January, we'd have the opportunity for people to give public input into the process. Specifically, NAC it could be discussed at their meeting. And that's when staff is going to get into the development of the actual budget. And then February through March, we will develop the budget. In the past, our timeline has been in late March. We have met with all departments. We have made some of our hard decisions about what's making it in the budget and what's not. What we want to do is shortly after that, bring it back to council and say, this is what we're looking at. This is what the budget would look like, what that translates into a tax rate, and have that conversation early on so that, you know, we're not redoing work if you have any suggestions or changes. And then in May, we'll have our presentations to the public like we would normally, and then in June, we adopt the budget. So if that is a process that sounds like it'll work, we'll try it. Obviously, we can amend it, change it next year or as we are in it, but I think that's the framework I was hoping to go down if everyone's on board with that.
I'm fine with that approach. I think it does speed up things a little bit. We now, as a council, everybody has at least one of these processes under their belt. And I think it will help also with the public, who I think will be engaged, and hopefully a filled out NAC will bring some more juice to the subject. And I'll make two suggestions to help my life easier, so I don't have to bother staff. And that is that the data on our website, the performance data and all that, if that can be reviewed so that it's current and robust. Some places it's very, very good. In other places, I'm searching for why isn't it, it was there in 2022, but I can't find it in 2024. And there may be an explanation, but I just find it helpful. Example is this is a great chart you all put together a few years ago, but it's for 2021. I couldn't find that chart. I know I've seen the data, but not in that management information format for 2022 and 2023. So anything that would make it easier for myself and any other council member to digest the information, I think will make us better contributors to the process. So that's my only comments, but I like your proposal and the thoughts that went into it.
I support the proposal also. I think it makes sense. We're doing strategic planning right now, so it makes sense.
It looks great.
I don't want to
I
claim
particularly like October 22nd.
I don't want to claim to be an author. This is something that Doug and I discussed when we met. I think the other thing it does is, or it may do, shouldn't say it does, what it may do is keep us as a council from getting too deep into the data and too deep into the weeds, and keep us at the strategic level which is really where we belong, out of staff's hair, and focused on, I think you mentioned 5-year plan. It both coincides with the way we budget capital items, and I think is the right sort of horizon for us. So I like it very much, Doug. Thanks.
John, I think that's an excellent comment. I believe we're a strategic board, not an operational board, so I fully support that.
I don't need 187 KPIs. Doug may.
I'll give you 15.
I'm 10 to 15, and I'm good with.
Yeah.
Okay. No. Yes, relieve a few of the KPIs. Okay. Let us. You got what you need there, Doug. So we're all right.
Yep.
Okay. Under the topic of other business, is there anything people want to bring up? And Doug, is there some particular items that you know we'll see on the next meeting's agenda that you can run past us now as a topic?
Well, what we just talked about, we will review the survey data. So they closed it, I think, late last week. So they'll give us the information hopefully soon, and then we'll have it in a digestible format for you. And then we'll also review all our IAPs, which most of them have rolled over their multi-year IAPs. So they'll be the same for fiscal year 24 as 25.
You know how many responses they got?
Over 700. That was the number to get to the, the mathematical, statistical, yeah.
If they got 1,200, would they include them all?
They would have.
And we'll consider finalizing of the resolutions we discussed tonight. Is that likely?
Yes, that is likely. Those two ordinances.
I think Glenn brought up a couple comments of things that we need to bring up with Mike Newman. I think it's about time we got together with Mike Newman again for a closed session on getting some legal advice on a few things.
Yeah, but I was hoping to do that the second meeting in October, but.
That sounds reasonable.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is he primarily driving the inspection of what else is going on other places in the state on STRs? Or is that a later?
That's what I hope to do in October, to have that discussion. It's probably more of an Alex doing the research on it.
That's what I'm at. Is that Mike? Is that Alex?
It's more Alex, yeah.
Any other topics that people would like to anticipate in October? We have 2 meetings, and we only have 1 in November and 1 in December. So
parking? It's not urgent. Is that something you thought we would get to? Is that going to get pushed off because we have other things to do?
It is probably the next priority after dealing with some of these nuisances.
Great.
Yeah.
Do we know anything more on the contractors' availability for Chincoquin Magnolia intersection and the theater building parking spots.
Yeah, so the plan was to bid those in the winter months, so probably December with doing it in early 2025.
Okay.
The intent is that the work would happen before the spring high season of tourists.
Talked about we can't do road repaving, or we can't count on doing it in January, but we can do the necessary reconstruct, the modest modifications of that intersection?
Right, so pavement is, they don't usually want to pave until March, but we could do some work and then wait and just do one day of paving in March.
There's Jack, Barb, no? Dr. Morgan, John, okay. Well, I'll entertain a motion if anyone has an idea.
Move to adjourn the work session.
One move.
Second.
Second. We have a motion and a second to adjourn the work session. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion adopted. Good night, Irene. Thank you. All right, that was a good meeting. Got a lot done there.